Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities and Miniatures. You know me, and I can't resist a good Conquest kit. Today we're going to take a look at the 100 Kingdoms Crusaders. Now, I'll be honest with you, if I am to ever actually play with 100 Kingdoms on the table, it's always the cavalry, because the cavalry they've got is just absolutely awesome. But that's not actually why I wanted to buy this box. So, first of all, just looking at them, I get serious nostalgic vibes for the plastic Britons figures of my childhood, the very simple knights that we used to have with the Morning Stars and Maces. So this is hitting some serious notes of nostalgia, but this is the important thing right down here. Also makes men-at-arms. Now, obviously, you can buy this kit with the different box. It will have the exact same contents. But yeah, you're going to get 12 Crusaders or Men-at-Arms. I mean, they're pretty nice looking. They look a lot better proportioned than the originals, and I'm saying that as a fan of the originals. I feel like they did their job serviceably well. You know, typical stands, and our bases for them. But that's not what we're here for. And again, you get both. So the Men-at-Arms were the figures that were included in the original starter set for Conquest, at least for the 100 Kingdoms guys. So this is a bit of an update, kind of like how Mantic did their updated Basilians at one point or another. This is Parabellum doing much the same. So, right off the bat, so here we've got a nice flag. Bodies, I mean, I'm liking the bodies. The proportions and the sculpts themselves look a lot better. Looks like 4 shields per sprue. Empty scabbards are a nice touch for the swordsman, men-at-arms. Checking the backs just because I know at the very least with some of the larger stuff, like a lot of the Aroni kits, they've been having the bodies and stuff marked specifically as to which goes with which, but maybe it's not going to be that complex. So it looks like we've got, yes, we do, 3 of the same sprues. So you do end up with 3 banners. I mean, if you wanted to use them for conversion purposes, that's never a bad idea. Let's see what the instructions hold for us. So obviously the Men-at-Arms are going to have the swords, the Crusaders are going to have blunt weapons. Both use the same shields. The only other big difference is that the Crusaders are going to have the more bowl-type helmets that I can't think of the name, whereas the Crusaders have full helmets covering their entire face. So it looks like a pretty straightforward kit. Also, the Men-at-Arms have these little, I don't know what they're called, almost like fasteners for a cloak, but they're not wearing cloaks. Pouch is a nice little touch. I guess that's for either or body. Yes, it is. Again, that extra little chain is just for the Men-at-Arms, but if you wanted to get fancy with your guys, I'm sure you absolutely could. So here you can see how everybody's built. Pretty solid, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I say simple in the fact that, you know, it's a very unified look. There's not a lot of unique specific parts for each model. Saying that in regards to some of like the larger stuff, like the centaurs for Old Dominion, or some of the more funky stuff for the Wardruna, the Aroni, or even the Spires for that matter, where you have character models that really, not even character models, but unit models that have more character, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and that have a lot of very specific ways to build them. But these guys, since you got 3 of the same sprue, it's going to be pretty straightforward, but I imagine there's also a little bit of flex and give on the arm choices, since everything is going to be just nice, simple ball sockets. So if you really wanted to get funky with it, I probably feel like you could, but obviously that remains to be seen, so why don't we get some built? We'll see how that turns out and find out. So sit tight. Alright, so it had to happen. Let's start with the old, and let's bring in the new. And the first thing I really want to point out about these guys is that, you know what? I still think that this original Men-at-Arms kit gets a whole lot of unnecessary flack. It's a pretty decent kit, but yeah, night and day in terms of at least just options and the level of detail as well. I think they're close enough in size and stature. This guy is a little hunched over that, you know, it absolutely wouldn't look too out of place fielding both of them, or at least units of both of them. Yeah, there's some differences for sure. Not to say they're exactly the same. But, you know, it's definitely a nice upgrade. I do like that most of the faces, you can't actually see the mouths. I like having that nameless look to the troops. Now, I spent most of the package actually not building the Men-at-Arms. I did go ahead and build the standard bearer for one, because that's one of the things with the original starter set. You did not have the command options included. Something I've needed for some time. So again, you know, size-wise, sculpt-wise, it might look out of place in a unit, but I'm assuming that if I paint everybody the same, that won't be much of a problem. But I'll be honest, I'm a big mark for when it comes to, you know, blunt weapons. And as soon as I saw these guys had flails and morning stars and stuff, I was like, oh, heck yeah, I have got to start building these Crusaders. And the look of the helmets and everything, these guys to me just gave off that vibe that I really have always enjoyed. And I've mentioned before on the channel that, you know, I grew up with like the plastic Britain's Knights of yesteryear. And for me, seeing something in this pose just really hit that nostalgia button for me big time. And the last time I felt that was with the Foot Knights from Wargames Atlantic, which is a great kit, but it's not really going to match the aesthetic or size for Conquest. And I mean, they're completely separate things, obviously. Yeah, there's a bit of a size difference there. So while the Wargames Atlantic stuff is great for if you want something from a more historical perspective, obviously, if you are playing 100 Kingdoms, I mean, if you really wanted to mix and match, be my guest. More power to you. And I mean, obviously, if you have access to stuff like 3D printing, you probably have more models that are going to be able to, you know, hop in that case. Like some of the stuff from Raging Heroes, I think would look fantastic with a bunch of the Crusaders, you know, all in tow. But we're going to focus on them for a sec. I have to talk about the Sergeant Unit Leader dude. This thing was a mess. It had an absolutely tiny contact point, and the tails of his weapon were supposed to actually all stick out to the side. Let me tell you, immediately upon trying to glue that thing, it did not want to stay. Maybe that was just luck on my part. I ended up cheating, kind of gluing it to the edge, and then making sure that one of the tails of his flail thing here actually was going to get glued to the handle of the weapon, so that at least there was an extra contact point somewhere to keep everything kind of somewhat stable. But yeah, as I've said, I'm an absolute sucker for those types of weapons. Let's get the camera a little bit more, a better angle. Unfortunately, he's kind of leaning forward with that thing, so it's a little bit of a challenge to do. I think the guy at ease here, the standard bearer pose, is one of my favorite. He's just nonchalantly standing there ready for action. Yeah, whatever. You know, sure, you have synthetically grown, you know, space alien elf things with multiple limbs coming at me. I'm just going to stand there and, you know, shrug it off. No big whoop. Like I said, most of the rest of the box, unfortunately, is almost all entirely Crusaders. I actually built all of it, and I don't know where I put the rest of the guys. I know they're here somewhere, but I've got like, I don't know, 8 of them, 6 of them, I can't count. But yeah, you best believe I'm looking forward to having these guys. And another thing with the Crusaders is they don't need a really complex paint scheme. So they're pretty much, white, red, if you want to go with classic, actual, medieval Crusades colors. And even then you could probably get into some interesting coats of arms and whatnot. I'm not sure some history buff's going to come at me with that one, but anyway, it is what it is. Honestly, they're a fun little kit. I think, yeah, you're kind of hampered by the fact that with those dual kits, you end up with limited poses as opposed to a full, robust, this is everything you need for one type of kit. But I can't even think of any off the top of my head that really would fall under that kind of a category for a Conquest. I mean, just about all of the actual plastics out there for infantry units, with the exception of the original Men-at-Arms and like those early kits, are going to be dual kits. I mean, like the Wadroon, Blooded, Brave, Chosen a Conquest, Veteran, dual kit. Everything I'm thinking of is going to be a dual kit. Help me think about that one. I'm like thinking out loud right now on camera, but if you have any thoughts on units in plastic, and I'm going to say stuff like the Oroni don't count, because obviously, size-wise, yeah, they're going to be huge. And when you have an entire, army of monstrous models, it definitely makes a difference, but he's still not impressed. And that's one of the nice things about having a more straight, normal, less fantastic, and not to say that they don't have any fantastic units, in terms of like fantasy stuff. Archangel immediately jumps to mind. But having guys like this, I think, kind of helps balance out all the wild, fun, crazy stuff that you can find in a game like Conquest. I'm like looking for Dweg Hallman. I don't know. There's one at least. I know that's an Old Dominion guy. I love him. He's one of my favorites. I should have my new, what do they call it? The Lost and Found, and the guy with the big JoJo stand powering out of him coming soon for the Dweg Hallman. So we'll have to have them on the channel soon. But, I mean, they're at least kind of like the baseline for a lot of the other models out there. And, they came from a good place, and they've definitely graduated to a new level. I'm not getting rid of my original Men-at-Arms. No how, no way. Not that they all match up or anything anyways, but at least for now, I've got my Sergeant. Again, I built one. Don't know where he went. At least the standard bearer is here. We'll hunt them down at some point. Hopefully, I will get them all to match up. But my Crusaders at least are going to get to be the start of a new unit. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, if you guys haven't had a chance to check out any of the Conquest stuff, you will be able to take a look at that link down below. So with that said, then, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here soon. Bye-bye.